Hey everybody, welcome to Saturday Scares with Kyle. I'm your host, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com. Today we are talking about Count Yorga Vampire. A quick synopsis for the film. When Hungarian Count Yorga is invited to conduct a seance for young Donna's recently departed mother, they're unaware that he's a vampire who has taken a liking to the women and her friend Erica. Basically, it's a pretty standard little vampire fare. It's directed by Bob Kellyan, or Keljan, I might be saying that wrong. He directed Scream, Blackula, Scream, which I consider to be the better of the two Blackula films. He also did do the follow-up to this film, The Return of Count Yorga. This film originated as a softcore adult film called The Loves of Count Yorga, and in fact, some copies of the film carry that moniker as the title. My copy actually did. It's an Arrow release of the film. It stars Robert Quarry, who plays Count Yorga. He's kind of got this certain level of not generally young and attractive, but he does kind of have this older swagger to him that I think is kind of appealing to the film. We also have Roger Perry, who's kind of the Van Helsing of the film. He plays Dr. Jim Hayes. He appeared in The Thing with Two Heads, but he in this film is the doctor who's essentially kind of telling them, like, he's basically our exposition machine, if you will, but he does a pretty solid job of divvying out the exposition as well as giving the rules of the specific vampire tale. Some of you might recognize Michael Murphy. He appeared in Magnolia. He was I think he was the mayor in Batman Returns. He was definitely the dad of Angel in X-Men Last Stand, but he's appeared in a ton of stuff. He's one of those faces you see and you can immediately like pull him out of the crowd and pick out who that is. So not a ton of people that I would out and out like recognize on the outset here, but the film does have some solid B-level performances to it. The problem with the film is that it does tend to carry a lot of pretty generic vampire fare. I like the 70s style of it. I like the world building that they're with. It's just not a lot that's done there. Not as flashy or exciting as Scream, Blackula, Scream, which I think really made the most of its blaxploitation. This film kind of sits to the background a little bit. It's got some stylistic choices that I liked quite a bit, but it's more of a mixed bag of elements. Some of them work pretty well, some of them don't. Overall, I'm a little bit more positive on it than negative, but I do feel that it's the kind of movie that doesn't really utilize its idea all that well. I mean, it's supposed to be this bonkers kind of a poster, and it's not as bonkers as you'd think. But there's some cool creature effects. There's some really neat things, especially near the end of the film, as they close in on Count Yorga's home to try and take him out at the end of the film. When Robert Quarry joined the film, he actually told them, like, I'm not joining this movie if it's an adult film, so you need to make it a horror film. So he was actually the big catalyst in turning this into just a general horror film as opposed to an adult film. And in fact, Yorga is notable because he almost crossed over with Dr. Phibes. You know, the Abominable Dr. Phibes, the Vincent Price film? They almost had a crossover. Back before that was really a thing. I know we'd had the Universal Monsters crossover, but up until that, there hadn't been a ton more of the crossover kind of films until you get things like Freddy vs. Jason, or Alien vs. Predator, or the eventual MCU and the cinematic universe thing. We didn't have that kind of crossover back during that time, but they almost did crossover. And in fact, Corey does still appear in the Dr. Phibes sequel. He's just not playing Count Yorga anymore. But it would have been kind of cool to see those two characters join up or take each other on. I've never seen Dr. Phibes, but it would have triggered me to check those films out as well, and we'll probably cover those in a future episode as well. Overall, mixed bag, messy kind of a movie, but it does carry that certain flavor of low budget 70s style exploitation horror film. There's a lot of Hammer influence, not as solidly put together as Hammer would have done. It's no Vampire Lovers. It's no Dracula, Horror of Dracula or anything like that. But there's enough I think was kind of fun about it as well. It's definitely a movie that plays fast and loose with its mythology, doesn't really take a lot of time to develop too much of it, but some of the things that they do there are things that I haven't seen done in this way in a horror film in a while, or especially a vampire film. I was surprised with some of the ways that they had Count Yorga kind of integrate within modern society. I mean, he's coming to help them with a seance. So you have to ask yourself, Is it because he's an occultist before he became a vampire? Is it because of his vampiric ways? It's just an interesting way to introduce a vampire into the mythology of the world. Overall, I am more positive on Count Yorga Vampire than negative, although it's just a little bit into that recommendations zone. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Count Yorga Vampire. If you're a fan of vampire movies, especially 70s style ones, this might be some fun for you. For me, again, kind of a mixed bag, but enough where I enjoyed myself while watching it, which is the most important part. Join us next time where we will be talking about, we'll probably get stoned. And by that I mean we're going to watch a giant stone kaiju destroy some stuff as we look at the film Daimajin next time.